joining. So today we have Brendan with us, who is on a mission to make the world a better place through some of the initiatives that he takes part in. So some of these include fighting food waste by working with a company called Too Good To Go, which you must have heard for, which is very famous, especially in the US. Then he works with mentoring startups to Techstars, and then he is writing The Becoming Mindset to build mental toughness and turn pain into power, which would be out soon. Let's welcome Brendan on 10 Minutes of Hiding Wisdom, who will tell us about his experience making the world a better place and how to get you that dream job that you've always wanted. Hi, Brendan. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Manal. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us, Brendan. So can you tell us about your experience, where you're currently working, and how things have been going with the company so far?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you the quick high level. So a little bit about me, I think as a human being first is I've been a type 1 diabetic for 21 years, first gen college student from Rhode Island. Professionally, I've been in startups for about 7 years now, starting first with my dad's family business in sports memorabilia, then building my own nonprofit engagement platforms to build a team, raise a little bit of money. Ended up as somewhat of an early employee at a bigger startup in the US and in Europe called Lime. So micromobility, scooters, probably maybe ridden them before. So started out there in the global project team. And then now I'm at Too Good To Go, really massive in Europe. And my goal as the US expansion project manager is helping fight food waste all over the US and Canada as well.
Oh wow! So as in, like, you worked with quite a lot of startups. What drew you to startups in the first place? Why not work with established companies with a big name already? What was something about startups that you were like, okay, this is where I would like to see myself work?
Yeah, I think looking at my family is right. Like growing up, we were like lower middle class, never had a ton of money. And I mean, my family's just a bunch of hustlers. So I think that's right. Like startups, it's all about the hustle and then eventually figure out how to work smarter than working hard all day, every day. And I think, I think the thing that I really love about startups is just there's some sort of problem that people are itching to solve, and then you get to help solve that problem. I also like the ability to wear multiple hats and then have full ownership over what's happening, right? So I think that's one of the things where it's like, I don't know if like big companies, I'm sure are great, but I really love that entrepreneurial environment where you can just bring something to life and like your customers are part of that process, super cross functional, and you're probably doing more things than your job title says, which I think is a lot of
That
fun.
makes sense. That makes sense. I think because of the flat organizational structure that exists within startups, it's always so easy for people individually to take decisions or even reach out to the CEO, as opposed to having being part of an organization that has a well-established structure with a hierarchy that exists. Because before going to the CEO, you'll have to go through 5 to 6 other people and get their approval before actually getting to the CEO. So I can definitely see why you would want to be part of a fast-paced environment that allows you complete autonomy over anything that you want to do. So thank you for sharing that, Brendan. So Brendan, as in, like, why did you decide to be a part of a company called Good to Go in the first place? Like, what does the company do? What drew you to the company in the first place?
Yeah, sure. I don't know, being a type 1 diabetic, I always thought I'd end up in healthcare. And I was always frustrated because I always wanted to be in healthcare and they never wanted me to be in healthcare, right? They're like, you don't have a healthcare background and this and that. And I was like, all right, then we'll switch. And I think I went through this realization where I started to really care about sustainability. So when I first was thinking about joining Lime, I was like, well, if people aren't in cars or if they're using different modes of transit and it's electric and, the environment, I was like, well, that to me is just such a cool start of the conversation. And then after Lime, I was kind of sitting there and thinking about, like what's the unique value proposition? Like what is my skill set I could bring to the world? And I always thought it was marketing and business development, but I've learned it's actually operations, and that's definitely my biggest strength. So when I saw Too Good to Go and it was about sustainability, I was talking about how like food waste in the US is 40%, right? So 40% of food gets wasted, and they were hiring for operations people. It's just, for me, it was just a no-brainer to want to be involved in that not only that job, but that company, which is on this global mission to end food waste, but is also doing it in a way where they're creating a sustainable business, both from like a business perspective and a financial perspective too, which is really cool.
That's true. I think there's this like okay, with companies like this you can grow and everything, but I think there's this sense of purpose because you're being part of a company that is giving back to the environment and helping the world become a better place, which is something that's very important, especially because if you want to work long hours and everything, I think you need to have that belief in the organization itself or the company itself for you to want to work hard rather than actually just being part of a company just for the sake of the money, which is something that a lot of people do, and then they just get tired of it and then leave and quit their job. So thank yeah. But other than that, Brendan, I would love to hear regarding what you do. As in, like you mentioned that you're in operations. So what exactly is your role within the operations team, and whether you're hiring within your company, what kind of roles are open, what kind of people would you want to be a part of your company? So take it.
Yeah,
It's your
sure.
turn to answer.
So
Go
my
ahead.
role right now is, and I've been here about 6 months at Too Good to Go, is Too Good to Go started expanding to the U.S. Almost a year ago, probably about 10 months ago, and I believe they're in 15 countries in Europe at this time, or 14. And they're expanding to the US. So part of my role is, well, just bringing that mission and being a lot of the behind the scenes work, right? So building out our launch playbooks, managing the cross functional meetings and teams to ensure that like we're on time, we're on budget, helping pick and prioritize which markets we actually launch to. And why we're launching to them and when we're launching to them and what resources we need to launch to them. So another big part of that too is the business operations side of it, right? Is what are the processes or playbooks or structures or templates we can create that are scalable so that when someone starts on day one, we don't have to keep, spinning the wheel and recreating things, where we've actually got this folder we can just hand to someone and then be more of a strategic advisor to kind of push forward. And when we look at the company in the US right now, we're currently operating in New York, Boston, New Jersey, Philly, DC. We just launched San Francisco, Seattle, and Portland recently. And there's a few other launches coming up this year, which you'll hear about shortly within the rest of the US and some major cities. And I think we're hiring across the board. We're scaling very quickly. So our job site is pretty up to date, and there's a lot of people across sales, success, a few operations roles, marketing, et cetera. So yeah, the company's scaling very, very quickly in the US.
Definitely, I can see that, especially moving from 15 countries in Europe to actually going to different states within the US. So I can definitely see why you would need all hands on deck, specifically because global expansion itself, it's such a big task. And I think understanding the market that would vary from Europe to the US, as in like, would be very interesting. So I mean, I'd love to hear how the market varies. Like, were there some challenges when you especially expanded from Europe to the US? Like, what were some of the things you were like, okay, this was not something that I expected to be different?
Yeah, well, I think when I came to the company, one of the things they talked about, right, is just how much of a win-win experience it is, right? Where you've got restaurants with leftover food, you've got customers getting that food at a discount, and then you're helping the environment by not throwing that food out. So it's just the value proposition is very clear. I think, of course, each country, each city, each state is going to have cultural nuances, and I think it's up to us to figure out what that is. And I think one of the coolest ways to solve for those differences is by hiring locally, so that you have people from specific communities serving those communities, whether it be language, geographical location, socioeconomic status. So that has been one of the coolest things to help us make sure we're expanding the right way when we go to different places.
I love that cultural approach because you're taking into account the differences that exist, but then again, you're actually making those people be a part of your mission, which is something that's very
Totally.
important. So thank you so much for sharing that. So Brendan, last question. As in, like you've had such a wonderful experience working with a lot of startups. What is one piece of key advice that you would have for job seekers out there to help them navigate through their career transitions, or whether it's getting them a new
Cool.
job?
I've been thinking about this. I've got three small ones that I would actually love to give if that's cool with you. Sweet.
Go ahead.
So there's something
Go
someone
ahead.
said to me a few years ago that I thought was really useful. And it was your 20s, right? Coming out of college is all about figuring out what it is you want to do. Your 30s is doing it, and your 40s is being an expert in whatever it is you chose to do, which I think was really helpful. I think when I look at the job market, there's two things I think about from both being a candidate in the past and also now as a hiring manager. I think referrals are really helpful, right? And when I say that, it doesn't mean that I need to know you or I need to work with you before. I've had experiences where I've reached out to people I've never met before, but I've told them the why behind I want to work there, or like I've seen an art, like something. I've made it very clear to them why I'm interested in talking. And I've had people I've never met or talked to before actually refer me to their company. So I think it's just, I think the coolest thing about networking is if you reach out to someone, the worst thing that happens is they don't answer. And that's totally okay. So I think reaching out is really important. And I think something else I've learned that's really important, especially as you've got a few years of experience under your belt, is how do you make yourself like an easy hire? Do you come from the space? Do you have some sort of unique skill set and an extreme passion for something? Do you have a few years of experience doing what they're asking you to do? So even if you don't fully have that, I think coming into the interview or the company and thinking about how do I make it very easy for them to hire me so that on day one or in the first month or the second month, I can actually thrive and really accelerate. And I think the last thing I'll say, I know it's a longer answer, but really important, is something like coming into the remote work world. Someone the other day was asking me, well, how do we get people who are remote to earn trust that we've never met? And my recommendation was, at the beginning, post COVID, when things are a little more normal and safe, that, they spend a few weeks in the office, get to know the culture, meet people, especially who they work with. But I think the really important thing, and this is something I do every single time, is coming in and just really making sure you've got one bigger or medium size, whatever that first project as you get, that you just put everything into that project. And if you're remote, now you can say, hey, look what I did. I was behind a computer. I was at home. Like, I was capable of doing this. So I think once you get into the new company, I think that's a really important thing to focus on. And of course, you don't slack or slow down after. But I feel like at that point, you've earned a lot of trust within the company. So you've got more freedom, and then you can start to bring your own point of view to the table, which is really cool.
That's definitely really useful for companies specifically that are transitioning towards actually being remote, because I think this might be the new normal where a lot of companies specifically might just go into hybrid mode, which is fine because I think a lot of people have gotten used to it. But I think the
Totally.
referral part, especially because I think that was very important, was because I never thought that as a like I mean, I always thought that I had to personally know the people for them to refer me,
Hmm.
but then that's something that's very insightful for me as well. So thank you for
Of
sharing that.
course.
Well, Brendan, it was an absolute pleasure having you as a guest. Thank you so much for coming on the show. And if people do reach out to me regarding interest, regarding good to go, I will definitely forward them to you. Thank you
Cool.
so much.
No, thank you, Manal. This is great. I appreciate it.